Well, good morning. Sorry, I'm running between services here, but thank you. Tried it, man. It's so hard to do a whole book in one. Like, it's just so much to. Huh? Or two letters. Yeah. Hey, listen. I want to apologize. When I had the vision for this class, I was hoping it would be like consecutive weeks we'd be together and not here a week, gone a week. But just in light of the fall with information meetings and votes and Unity Sundays, there's been a lot of, so I apologize. I appreciate you sticking with me. I'm trying to get through this what I had planned originally. So it's, and we are recording most of them. So if you missed a week and you want to get a week, I'll make it available to you. But anyway, grateful for that. So we are in third or fourth week, and today I want to talk about the concept of God before kings. God before kings. It is really amazing to me just how the Bible is constantly relevant no matter where you are in life. You know, and it doesn't matter who's in the administration. There's just so many practical things that you find in God's Word that speak to us even today about this whole concept of God before kings. I want to talk about this idea of faithful resistance when earthly politics demands what belongs to God. That's really what it comes down to, is earthly politics taking over what belongs to God. What happens when faith collides with politics, with power, and with pressure? We're going to look at Daniel chapter 3. You should have a copy of it here. That's not an Oscar. That is a picture of what they thought the statue might have looked like. And Daniel chapter 3 is really a fascinating look at this whole concept of God before kings. And what I've done is, it's a really long passage, so I've summarized sections of it, and then I've actually put in red the actual scripture, and then we go back to summary and then back to scripture. So just to set the stage, in Daniel chapter 3, King Nebuchadnezzar, he builds this massive gold statue. It's about 90 feet tall, and he commands everyone to bow to it when the music plays. So he kind of set this thing up that when you hear the music, that would be the trigger. When that music starts, you would then have to get down and bow. And the idea is not like this. It'd be more of you're on your hands and knees in a prostrate position. So that's the idea when the music plays. And anyone who refuses would be thrown into a blazing furnace. How's that sound? I mean, at first glance, you're probably like, you know what? I'm gonna bow. I'm gonna bow because I don't really like the blazing furnace concept. That seems rough, right? But this is the problem. It's not just bowing, and your bowing doesn't mean anything. There's meaning behind the bow, where by bowing to this statue, it is intentionally designed to be a form of worship. You might not feel it as worshipful, but by you bowing is saying to everyone else, I am also going to worship this 90-foot statue. Also think about that, 90 feet. You know how big that is? I mean that's, I went rappelling once from a 100-foot cliff, and on the top of a 100-foot cliff, when you look down, those people are small, like really small. So this is a massive statue. This would have been an amazing feat just to create this thing. But here's what's going on here, is that political theater meets idol worship. That's what's happening. Nebuchadnezzar is 100% making this about worship. And it's a test of loyalty disguised as patriotism. All right? I don't want us to miss this because it's important to understand the background. And every single person in this story bows except for three. Three men, we know them, and the only reason we know them is because they didn't bow. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that's their Babylonian name. I don't even know their Hebrew name, because I could find it's in there, but we don't know them as that. So I want to ask, before we go any further, is there a modern parallel here? Do you see any modern parallel here? And before you answer out loud, underneath your sheet in your table, there's a couple questions there. What I'd like you to do is get into some groups, and I want you to answer these questions we try to answer them all. I don't need 7 answers of the same question, but I want a summary from each table. But the questions are, list 1 or 2 or 2 or 3 ways, and they could be political or otherwise, okay? So it doesn't have to be political, where we have pressure to conform to the culture. What's a way in our culture that we have pressure to conform to that? Second one is, how does this conformity collide with our convictions? So think about that question. What are some modern golden statues people feel pressured to bow to? This is the thing that's tricky about our culture, is that we don't have a lot of, when we read in the Bible and they're like, oh, you're bowed to a golden calf, you're bowed to the statue. We don't have a lot of things in our culture that we're like, oh, I'm going to bow, literally physically bow to it. But there are ways we bow to gods that are in our culture. So what are some of the modern golden statues that we might feel pressured to bow to? And then when have you felt pressure to compromise your convictions to fit in, whether that's at work, online, church circles, whatever. So take just a couple minutes, talk about that. Give me any examples you have, and then we'll circle back. So, okay?
Saturday, hundreds of thousands of people throughout this nation are marching against our president this next weekend. It's called No Kings. Well, No Kings. It's called No Kings. All these rallies all over the world.
How does it
So doing political is demonstrate or do you just conform to the fact that you're honoring the president, whatever the president is. So that's where I came to my I was talking to someone yesterday that's around. So
So that would be like free speech versus.
well, you just conform to status quo.
Okay, what else?
The fact is that
to not communicate outside your own tribe.
I got you.
It's this dividing.
I like that.
Trying to play
One of the things that came to mind was technology. Yeah, tell me more about what you're.
I was thinking, you know, you're gonna have to do it if you're going to stay current. With everything in your heart that you're current.
Yeah, conform to the culture.
You have to do it.
Yeah, what I'm not concerned is that it's going faster than our ability to think critically about it.
Just look at AI.
Right, you know, it's like an easy way to.
Yeah, so easy.
All right, so we got 2 ways. Let's do it.
Burn down the world.
Well, I mean, we can, that's just, I mean, let's say something.
Maybe 2 more minutes. Maybe 2 more minutes.
How does this conformity collide with our convictions? Some people feel very strongly about it.
People that are on talking to people.
Where all the liberals live.
Yeah. It was the ideal, it wasn't a physical flag. You guys were just-
I think my daughter in the car was Charleston.
All right, how we doing? John, are you done? You at least done number one? Okay. Two. Okay. I know. All right. Yeah. You guys just talk about pickleball? Is that? All right. Well, let's come on back. Maybe if you didn't get into every question with your group, that's fine. But what are some ways today where we have pressure to conform to the culture, political or otherwise? Just can you give me some examples of?
Margaret felt, oops, sorry.
Go ahead.
Margaret felt the political parties, it was
Okay.
just, which way are you?
Which way?
Sometimes
Okay.
with friends or whatever, there's always a discussion.
Okay.
Comes up, and there's always that concern, what side are you on?
What side are you on? Okay, yeah. Okay, that's good.
Is this just feeling pressure or,
It could be either. It could be either. Yeah.
yeah, I think the pressure is all around us,
Yeah.
but
But anything specific that you feel? Yeah.
Well, I mentioned in our group, one of the things that I think where there's pressure to conform in a way, but one thing that I have a pet peeve about it is social media today.
Yeah.
Is a massive driving force for
Yep.
people to inform.
Yep.
And it allows people to look for the silos they want to be in.
Yeah.
Once they get in those silos, the world
That's right. Yeah. Well, as someone who has a social media presence, one of the pressures I feel is I need to get more likes, more follows. Like it's just this. It's very subtle, but when you're a content creator, you get judged by, oh, you only have 10,000 people following you, and it's just like, okay, whatever. But so yeah, the pressure's there. Yeah. If you have a MySpace account, let me just. Yeah.
I think there's pressure not to speak up.
Not to
And
speak up. Okay.
I think sometimes.
Okay, yep.
For the tipping the apple cart. And some of that maybe is people learning how to speak up in a way that's not inciting, you know what I mean? It's like to have a conversation about things that are very difficult to discuss.
Yeah.
But I mean, really.
That's good,
And
yeah.
At work, the not speaking up, again, I think that's some of the pressure.
Yeah. Well, and we live in a culture now where people are speaking up, whatever they believe on any part of it, and they're getting fired.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit where we're in a culture now where it doesn't really matter what side. You have to think about, do I post this or do I make a comment? Because depending on who's controlling your purse strings, but
should be coming from the top down.
top down, yeah.
That's the example.
Yeah, that's right.
We don't like to respond.
Yeah. How about how does this conformity collide with our convictions? That's a harder question maybe, but does it change our convictions?
you might question them.
You might question the conviction. Yeah.
If everybody else in the group thinks another way, you think,
Yeah.
you're scared to stand up. True.
Okay. Yep.
And I think a lot of people will throw out their convictions just to
Just to
be part of something.
yeah. Yep. I'm involved with the pickleball community in Charlotte, and there's probably 1,000 players out there, and I don't know all of them, but it's a tight group. You know how it is. You keep running into people. So a lady that I know, I don't play with her very often, but she's connected to a lot of players. She posted something on Facebook, and it just was an outright not right thing, like her belief, whatever. I didn't agree with it. So I initially started to write, and then I stopped. And the reason I stopped was because I struggle with this as I'm not just a player, I'm a pastor. And so I got to be careful how I comment and what I say. But I had to weigh it between, well, am I not saying it because I'm trying to reach all people? Am I not saying it because I want to be invited to the next pickleball event that they have? Like, and it starts to get really, and I don't even care. Like, this lady lives an hour away. I never see her. Like, it's not like I even, but I found myself really stopping, going, why am I hesitating speaking what I think is the truth? And it's because there's a consequence to be paid. And I think it's for all of us in all the different, nooks and crannies. So how about this? What are some golden statues we might feel pressured to bow to? Can you think of any that are specific, that you don't have to agree with it or disagree with it, just what are out there that?
Yeah, our table said technology.
Technology? Okay, in what way? Like?
I think it just, we discussed that so many things are happening so quickly that we feel pressure to say, we have to get on board in
Yeah.
order.
Okay, yeah.
To do life.
We mentioned money. I mean, you got to keep up with the Joneses, spend money to sing house.
Okay, yeah. It always cracks me up when I enter a neighborhood that I don't see very often. You'll see one person with, we'll just say, like, they have this thing on their mailbox. And then everybody has the same thing on their mailbox. You're just like, someone started that and everyone else was like, let's do that. So, yeah. No judgment if you have something on your mailbox. So it's just all right, how about this one? This is a little bit more personal, but have you ever felt pressure to compromise your convictions in any environment, work or school, or, could be years ago?
Sure.
Yeah, yes, is the easy answer, yeah. Anyone want to share anything that you can remember?
I think a lot of people feel that pressure to come
Yeah.
today because there are so many people out there attacking
Yeah,
people that disagree with them.
yeah,
As you were talking about pickleball, if you disagree, you have no idea who's out there that's
yeah.
going to come after you.
You're right, yeah, yeah. That's right, yeah. Yeah, it's a frightening,
All the anxiety that goes along with that.
yeah. Yeah, and I know social media, especially with teenagers, there's a definite connection between your involvement on social media and depression or anxiety or all the things that come with it. And I find myself, I get off. I'm online in the sense I have a presence, but I don't do a lot of scrolling. I just, because it's just a waste of time, and it also brings me into a place it's not really good for me to be in. But here's what's interesting. It used to be, I think, years ago, that all the pressure, we talk about teenage peer pressure, right? All the pressures on these teens, but the reality is we all have it. It just looks different, right? Just like, teens are pressured to drink or not drink, have sex, not have sex, all those things. But here's the deal, is these kids are looking to us in our own world. We might not have pressures to drink or not drink in our little social circles, but we still have those pressures, and our kids are watching that. Our grandkids are watching it. How does granddad, how does mom handle that? So, any other thoughts on that? Any other thing you want to mention about the small group questions? Yeah.
What if we all had lived in Nazi Germany? Would we have conformed?
Yeah.
Or would we have paid the price, like Dietrich Bonhoeffer
Yeah.
paid the price?
That's right.
Maybe paid the price.
Yeah.
Or Soviet Russia, would we have conformed?
Yeah.
Or China today, would we conform just to survive?
Yeah. These are great questions. Yeah. Well, in Daniel chapter 3, that's the standard. You hear the music, you're going to bow to the statue. If you don't bow, you're going into a furnace. So that's pretty clear cut. I mean, you got to give Nebuchadnezzar some props that he at least made it very clear. These are the rules of engagement, right? So we find that some Babylonian officials, likely they were jealous, but they ratted out Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they accused them of defying the king's orders. And you see it there in your sheet. Some Jews whom have set the affairs of the province of Babylon, they pay no attention to you, your majesty. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up. So what we notice here is that there's this concept of this loyalty to God is seen as disloyalty to the empire. See the picture? If these three men are going to be loyal to their God, they're going to be disloyal to the empire, and that's the setup. So, furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summons Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king. Verse 14, and Nebuchadnezzar said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up? Now when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, if you're ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? So Nebuchadnezzar makes it religious, doesn't he? Like, it's not just this political thing. He's basically saying, all right, this is about your God. What God's going to be able to save you from this scenario that I'm setting up? So verse 16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, said King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. Yikes. Is that making a stand? I should say so. Is it pretty clear where they stand? Were they rude about it?
No.
Were they still respectful? Okay, how do we know they're respectful in this? What do we see? Huh? Yeah, they're calling him your majesty, so they're recognizing his title, his authority. But they're also being pretty clear, right? They're not going to bend. Do you think they missed the part about the furnace? No. They remembered that part? Okay, I'm just making sure. So Nebuchadnezzar, verse 19, he was enraged. He orders the furnace 7 times hotter. I don't know how they judge that, and the soldiers who throw the men in are killed by the flames. That's how hot this thing is. You ever been near a bonfire, right? And you get close enough, you're like, all right, I can tell that that's a bonfire. It was so hot, they couldn't even get nearer to throw these guys in. They were consumed by the flames. But they somehow threw the men in. And when the king looks inside, he's shocked. And he says, did we not throw 3 men bound in the fire? Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed. And the 4th looks like a son of the gods. And so one of the principles I want to show in this is that God doesn't always keep you from the fire, does he? In this story, he doesn't keep these 3 men from the fire. He actually allows them in the fire, but he protects them not just from it, but what's the other component in this? He's with them. He walks with them in it. And that's really, I think, really comforting to know that, because when we talk about our own pressures to conform, what are the golden statues in our culture that we feel tempted to bow to? Or what are the ways where we are being pressured, whether it's our job or our reputation, whatever. Sometimes we know, all right, that's going to be fire I'm going to be into, or literally fired by saying this or not saying this. And so there's that pressure. But I think one of the things I want to point out is that God doesn't protect us from the fire. He sometimes will say, you're going to go into the fire, but I'm not abandoning you in it. And I think it's a really important message for us to remember. So he sees this 4th figure in there. So Nebuchadnezzar calls them out of the fire. Not even a hair is singed. What does that symbolize? Complete protection. Would you have imagined that? Like if you were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, if you could imagine a way where you know you're going in. You're going in the fire. That's just what's going to happen. You can't probably even imagine that you would, like the deliverance I would think would come before I got to the fire. I would expect. Like that would be my expectation. If God's going to save me, it's going to be before I get tossed in, not while I'm in it. But if I'm in it, there would be a little scenario would be like, all right, well, I'm not coming out unscathed. Like I am going to be burned. I'm going to be whatever. And what do we see here is that they come out and it says not even what's the word? A hair was singed. Have you ever start your grill? I've done this. You know that little stupid button? Like it's so like unstable and you're pushing it like a Pac-Man game and you're like, why is this not doing it? And then you think, oh, I guess not. And then you light it and then you have no eyebrows. You ever in that? Not even a hair was singed in this scenario. I couldn't have imagined. That's where my lack of faith would be, that would be the scenario in this. Do you know what was burned? There was one thing burned. The ropes that bound him. Whoa. That's wild, isn't it? The ropes that bound him. Yeah. She listens, Fulton. So Nebuchadnezzar says, "Praise be to God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They trusted him and defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own." What is he saying when he says that? I mean, what Nebuchadnezzar is kind of summarizing this really succinctly. What's he saying when he says that? He says it out loud at one point. They're willing to defy the king.
Yeah.
I mean, remember, they defied him earlier, and what was his reaction? Enraged. So enraged that he said, "Make the fire hotter." As if as if the 2 times hotter wasn't bad enough. He's like 7 times hotter. So he recognizes they stood up to me and defied my words and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own. Do you think that spoke to Nebuchadnezzar? Do you think that was a powerful testimony?
Enough to where he praised their God.
I mean, enough to where he changes his
Right there.
religion, his understanding of whose God is more powerful. I think there's another principle here, but when you take a stand in the fire, other people notice. Other people notice. So sometimes it's hard to not think about yourself. What are the consequences to me? But how many times have we seen it where someone takes a stand and their stand was the example that other people needed to be like, you know what, I'm going to stand too. Because we know what they're thinking inside. What are they thinking inside when they're forced to bow to a statue they don't want to bow to? If they have convictions not to do that, what are they thinking inside? I don't want to do this, but I don't have the courage to not do it. I don't want to be the only one. I don't want to be stood out in the crowd. I don't want the consequence of the fire or the death or all the thing. Like we're all thinking it, or there's a lot of people thinking it, but it requires one person or a group of people to say, no, we've had enough. Like, enough. I have a feeling that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, leading up to this point, had seen other things going on they didn't like, right? You would imagine it wasn't like Nebuchadnezzar was like in the choir, and then one day he's like, I have a statue idea. Probably it was like leading up to it, and they were probably uncomfortable. That's usually how this works. It was like, oh, geez, another thing, and then finally this was the clear line in the sand. But the world took notice, and their resistance turned into revival for the king. I think when the pressure to bow is real, Daniel gives us a roadmap of staying faithful no matter who's watching. And I think it's really powerful. So I want to just quickly, I got like 4 minutes, but there's a couple things I think are helpful. I tell this to teenagers all the time. If you want to know before you go to the party Friday night whether you're going to drink, there's actually a way you can know before you get to the party. What's that way? Decide before you go to the party if you're going to drink or not. Because guess what? If you go to the party and you haven't decided, what's happening? You're on the floor. You're going to be drinking. You know. There was a kid in my youth group years ago, and he said, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to join a fraternity, because he heard a lot of bad things about fraternity. He says, I don't know if I'm going to join. I probably will join if it's fun, but if it's not fun, I'm not going to join. I was like, Brett wasn't one of my smartest students. I was like, Brett, the whole point of a fraternity is it's fun. It's going to be fun. Like, you got to decide like long before. And I think we have to do that too, don't we? We have to kind of decide what's the line in the sand for us. And it might be different for this table than it is for this table. But for you, for your convictions, where you're at with your walk with God, what is that line? I can't cross this. Because if I cross this, then I've done more damage to my relationship than I realize. Like, this isn't just a statue now. This becomes a bigger issue that I can't ignore. And for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they, I think, developed the conviction before the crisis. They were solid that their loyalty was going to be here even when the fire got heated up. And they didn't stand to choose in the moment. I think they decided before the moment. And I think they decided before the moment because how many of them are doing it? 3 of them. I think as a group, they had been talking about this, going, I see where this is going. I can see them building this statue. I see the music people getting practicing. Like, I know what's coming. We have to make a decide. Are you with me? Because I don't really want to do it by myself, but you with me? Okay, the 3 of us. We're going to die together. They're your ride or die, right? That's where it comes from. So the second thing is this courage over compliance. Faith isn't about outcomes. It's about obedience, right? It's this obedience that we're going to obey no matter what. They didn't bow even when it was about to cost them everything. Everything. And you see it because they say to Nebuchadnezzar, as they're respectfully declining, they said, even if God does not. They're saying, we believe we're not going to do this, but even if God doesn't come through, we are not going to bow. Courage often looks like quiet consistency, and I think that's what you see. There's a presence in the pressure. They discovered something really powerful, that God meets you in the heat and not just outside of it. Faithfulness doesn't always lead to favor, but it leads to freedom. And that's, I think, what they were experiencing. You see this witness through resistance, that their refusal to bow became their biggest sermon. Just because they said, I'm not going to bow. And Nebuchadnezzar saw the glory of God through their steadfastness. I mean, he wouldn't have come around had they not bowed, right? He would have been another day of just being in charge. And then you see this respect without worship. They honored the king. They said, Your Majesty. They do it in a very respectful tone, but they wouldn't worship him. And I think that's the balance that we all have to find in our world, is how do we live in a world where it's respectful, and yet I'm not going to bow to your God. I'm so sorry. It's not going to happen. If you need to fire me, if you need to kill me, if you need to not invite me to your next pickleball game, like, hey, I get it. And I think that's what faithful resistance looks like. I don't know if you remember the story. In 2016, there's a guy named Andrew Brunson. He was an American guy, American pastor. He was arrested in Turkey, and he was falsely accused of terrorism because of his Christian faith. Imagine that. He's just being a Christian, being a pastor, but they accused him of terrorism. So he was in prison for 2 years by himself, and he was under pressure to deny or compromise his faith in exchange for freedom. Now, how about that? Can you imagine being in a Turkish prison? Like, no prison's great, but there's some prisons I think would be worse than others. He's in a Turkish prison, and all they're saying is, look, just deny your faith. That's all you got to do. You don't believe anymore, and we'll let you out tomorrow. And he didn't do it. And he's like, I can't do it. Because he was a man of integrity, and he was thrown literally into the furnace. This was a very political thing. If you remember back then, it turned very political because this one country was holding the others. In his own words, Brunson says this, I broke many times, and I cried out to God, but I made a choice. I would rather sit in a prison with him than walk free without him. That's what he thought. And after a ton of international pressure and prayer, and he was released, and what mattered the most to him is that he never gave up on his faith. He was kind of the modern day Daniel. Brunson didn't know the outcome, and he didn't have a guarantee of deliverance, but he had a conviction that he was going to stay faithful in whatever that looked like. So I think for us, that's the challenge. We live in a really interesting time, and there's a lot of pressure on all of us, even me. Every Sunday, even when I'm preaching, what do I say and what don't I say? Because I don't want to be unliked either. But I also need to weigh, how do I say something respectfully? How do I say it in a way that's true to my convictions and not just giving up? I think the reality is that sometimes we have to be in the fire and experience the heat. But God can protect us from the elements. And I think that's a good reminder for us in Daniel 3. Okay. You are able to protect us from the elements. And even if you do not, I'm going to be this way with you. And I think that's where we need to go. So, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, it makes me think of Nebuchadnezzar. He had this powerful display of God, and he recognized the power of God, but he didn't really turn his ways. The next thing, he gets this vision of the tree that's going to be chopped down, and Daniel tells him he's going to live like a hunt. But he has to be driven out to the field, living like an animal, before he actually turns.
Yeah, it began a power play between him and God.
Yeah.
But
even this wasn't sufficient.
Right. Yeah. And again, that's not the role for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That's not their goal. Their goal is to how to be faithful to themselves. Let God handle the kings. But all right, well, next week we should. What's next week? Yes, we should be back next week. So I'll let you know. Stay tuned. So thank you all. Have a good day.